Hey, this is Cam with Blacktail Studio, and this week I built a $9,000 desk out of one of the prettiest pieces of black walnut I've ever seen. And I know it doesn't look like much right now, but believe it or not, this piece of Bastogne walnut is absolutely unreal. Other than this one massive crack, the slab is really pretty clean, so I won't have to spend a ton of time filling a bunch of small cracks, just this one massive one. And the way I'm going to fill this one is I'm going to be using a jet black epoxy. And a lot of people ask me, why do I use a black epoxy? Why don't I try to match the walnut and use like a brown epoxy? And the problem is walnut comes in so many different colors, you can't just use brown, because like this slab has hues of red and purple and black, and I've found that the black epoxy really just highlights those black streaks and actually looks a little bit more natural than trying to match it with like a brown. So it sounds counterintuitive, but black epoxy really goes well with the walnut. This client asked if we could leave the live edge on top of the slab along with the live edge on the slab nearest to him, and also fill it with epoxy. And I'm kind of a yes man, so I went ahead and said yes, but it made it pretty difficult. You can see I couldn't make a traditional form for that epoxy, and in the end I had a kind of an ugly mess that I had to go get cleaned up at that industrial shop that I used. From there, I was really in the home stretch. I like to recess my table legs, so I spend a little bit of extra time, recess the table legs, spend even more time filling those other little defects that I missed, and then just really cleaning up that kind of messy epoxy pour. One of the most common questions I get is, what exactly do these bow ties do, and do you have to use them? And first off, all they really do is try to keep a crack from getting any bigger. That wedge shape holds the crack together, and you don't necessarily have to use them. This crack was already held in place with the epoxy, and I wasn't really worried about it getting any bigger, so I discussed it with the client. He loved the look of them, so we put a pair of them in here, and we put another pair further down the crack, and they're really just for looks in this particular case. Sometimes they can be really functional, like this was on the underside, and this was a crack that I was fairly worried about. So I added a couple that don't look quite as cool, but they're going to do a really good job of keeping that crack from splitting any further. You want to let your bow tie sit for around 24 hours or so. You probably could push it if you really wanted to, but I let them sit for at least 24 hours. Then here I was using my little block plane to clean them up, because I leave them a little bit proud intentionally, and that way I can sand them down flush. And from there, it's a lot of sanding. I spent probably about 6 hours sanding this one slab alone, filling all the little imperfections with CA glue, rounding the edge over, more sanding, checking for imperfections, just getting it ready so it's absolutely perfect when it's time to finish it. People often ask me, what stain do I use for my tables? And believe it or not, I basically never use stain, or at least I very, very rarely use stain. And I find that stain kind of just mutes all the colors, and it makes a project look, well, stained. What I do instead is I try to find a wood that naturally has the color that the client wants, and this wood has some of the craziest, prettiest natural colors I've ever seen. Again, this is Bastogne walnut, and it's not just ordinary Bastogne walnut. It has crazy figuring, crazy colors, and the finish I use is called the hard wax oil. So it's a very natural oil. It's actually made for hardwood floors though, so it's also durable. If there's ever a problem, the client can actually just wipe on fresh oil and wipe it off, and it'll look brand new. So let me know in the comments. I would love to know what you guys think of this natural finish, or would you prefer something like a polyurethane with that plastic clear coat?